Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a box of the 6 Shostakovich concertos. And it's really a no-brainer. You've really got to own this. It's such a simple thing. I actually thought, to be honest with you, that it was out of print because it's this one. It's a bunch of different artists and conductors, and we'll go through them one by one. But this was, one of these Phillips trios, which is now, as you can see from the thing on the edge here, Decca. It used to be Phillips, but now it's Decca. I don't know which way it goes, but it's Decca. And, this was a budget series or mid-price series, and most of the releases are gone. But I was sort of hanging out on my computer and looking at Amazon, and I saw that it's still around, or it was. It's still available. Somehow it's available somewhere. And it's such an easy way to get all the Shostakovich concertos, and you really should have them. And the nice thing about it is that, when it comes to the violin and cello concertos, as we all know, the first one is like the really famous one, and the second one is like a lot less so. And this gives you an opportunity to hear everything in context, to hear them both, which is really a very, very good idea. So let's talk about the individual performances, and we can take it from there. First, let's do the violin concertos. The first violin concerto is Victoria Mullova with one of these orchestras. Let me see who's doing it, which orchestra she's with. Of course, I thought I had this all memorized so I could do a smooth and professional presentation, but unfortunately, you're just going to have to settle for me, the amateur. No, it's Victoria Mullova with the Royal Philharmonic under Andrei Previn. Now, Mullova is perfect for this piece. Perfect. She's a very serious Russian artist. She has a gorgeous, sort of rich, dusky tone, technique to burn, and she plays the pants off the piece. This is one of my favorite recordings of the work, and I'm talking about including David Oistrakh and all, the famous other people who've done it, and the work itself. It's one of the greatest violin concertos in the history of mankind. I just love the work. The third movement, the Passacaglia, is one of the most noble and elevated pieces of music anybody ever wrote. And it's all the more wonderful coming from Shostakovich because, as we all know, he's known more for his tragic, sardonic, somewhat bitter music, but this is a lofty, unbelievably pure and majestic statement, and it's so wonderfully written. If you have a score, take a look at the score of that Passacaglia, because the climax, which is so intense, is only scored for the violin and strings, basically. It's all that's playing, but it's similar to the climax of the Largo in the Fifth Symphony, which is another amazing movement where Shostakovich achieves his intensity of expression simply through the emotional temperature of his lyricism. It's a wonderful, wonderful tribute to the kind of artist he was. It wasn't all, Russian bombast and equally Russian misery. There was grandeur and nobility in his writing, and you hear it nowhere better than in the Passacaglia of the First Violin Concerto. Now, the Second Violin Concerto features Gideon Kremer with the Boston Symphony under Ozawa, one of the first ever recordings of that work. It's not as popular, and let's face it, it's not as sort of tuneful and interesting a work as the First Violin Concerto, but the more you get to know it, the better it gets. It really is a fine piece of writing for the violin, and Kremer plays it quite wonderfully. He always had a bit of a raw tone, and it kind of suits the music. Late Shostakovich will never be as popular as middle or earlier Shostakovich because he became very bleak and very austere, and things often end quietly and with slow movements, although this concerto doesn't. And one of the wonderful things about all of Shostakovich's concertos is that he never has a finale problem. It tells you just how smart he was. His concertos never die at the end. If they end with slow music, it's because he wants them to, and it works. It really works. So that's a fine performance of the Second Violin Concerto. And again, if you like the first and you don't know the second, it's a wonderful opportunity to get it and to let it grow on you gradually, because it will. I assure you it will. There's great music in it. The same thing is true of the Second Cello Concerto, but here we have one of the great recordings of anything. We've got Heinrich Schiff on the cello with the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra and the composer's son, Maxim Shostakovich, conducting. This is the reference recording for the Shostakovich cello concertos, bar none. It is great from first note to last. And I do want to talk for a bit about the Second Cello Concerto, because I love the Second Cello Concerto. It's a tough work in some ways, but in others, it has this sweetness to the finale, particularly, that's quite remarkable in Shostakovich. An innocence, or an attempt to recapture an innocence. The first movement is a big, long adagio, and it rises to a very passionate climax punctuated by thuds on the bass drum. It's a very moving and dark piece of music. Now, the second movement is a scherzo, and it's based on a street cry that Shostakovich heard when he was in Odessa. And I happen to know what that was because I heard it when I was a kid. It's bubliki, kupitya, blubliki, kupitya, bubliki. It's bagels, buy bagels. Bubliki are bagels. And this is the Odessan street vendors, cry to come out and buy your bagels. The tune itself is a classic Russian tune. It's a lot like, those were the days, my friend, we thought they'd never end. Da, 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 da. It's quite similar. And Shostakovich has a field day with this tune. Then you get to the finale, which is sort of a theme and variations type thing with rondo elements. And it has a refrain that eases into this beautiful cadence with a harp underneath, and it just sounds so otherworldly in this context. But the piece actually ends with a march. Each recurrence of this rondo theme, it goes through this refrain, then there's a march, and the march ends with that tick-tock percussion that you hear at the end of the Scherzo of the Fourth Symphony, and again at the end of the 15th Symphony. That that kind of thing. I could get out my percussion ensemble and do it for you, but you need more than one person to do it convincingly. And that's how it ends, with a single note on the cello and just this tick-tock into infinity. It's very disturbing, but a tremendously rewarding and emotionally gripping piece. And it's difficult and it's virtuosic, but the virtuosity is completely subordinated to the emotional expression. And it's just a great piece, and this is the great disc. Now, the piano concertos are both sort of lighter works, although the first is more important than the second because it's really a masterpiece of Shostakovich's earlier period. It's written for strings and trumpet and piano, and here in the conductor is Vladimir Ashkenazy with the Royal Philharmonic, but we have two different soloists. We have Peter Jablonski and Christina Ortiz, and they're both very, very good performances. I mean, nobody blows these concertos. They really don't. I mean, they're almost always good. Now, there have been wilder and more exciting versions of these pieces since these were made. I mean, there was the composer's grandson, Dmitri the second, whatever he was, and other major artists have made the finale of the first with its sort of vaudeville music a lot wackier than in this performance, but they're very, very good and very listenable and enjoyable. And the second concerto, which is light and happy, Shostakovich actually called it a piece of shit. That was his view of it. He wrote it for his son. Make of that what you will. He did not consider it a major work, but it's delightful. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece of good-hearted, light, brilliant music, and Christina Ortiz plays it marvelously, and the recording is great. And so I can put the little booklet back, close this up. This is a 3-disc set of all the Shostakovich concertos that, I mean, you may enjoy other performances better, but it is top quality, absolutely top quality. And it's such an easy way to get this little chunk of the repertoire and of Shostakovich's output without aggravation or bother, and so I recommend it very, very, very highly. It is now a Decca trio. That used to be a Phillips trio. So keep on listening, folks, and here you go for Shostakovich Concertos. Thank you and take care.